In the world of financial crime, some scammers hide in dark rooms, behind fake names, burner phones, and anonymous websites. But every now and then, one of them does the exact opposite. She steps into the spotlight. She wears diamonds. She speaks like a professor. She moves like a celebrity. And she tells the world she is about to replace Bitcoin. Her name was Dr. Ruja Ignatova. To millions of people, she wasn't just a businesswoman. She was a visionary, a genius, a financial revolutionary, the woman they believed would make them rich. She called her company OneCoin. She said it was the future of money, a new cryptocurrency, a financial revolution, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But according to investigators, there was one problem. It wasn't real. No real blockchain, no real mining, no real cryptocurrency. Just a beautifully packaged lie, sold to the world through hype, greed, trust, and desperation. By the time it all began to collapse, prosecutors say more than 3.5 million people had been pulled in, and over $4 billion had been taken. And then, just as the walls were closing in, the crypto queen disappeared. No public sightings, no arrest, no body, only rumors, plastic surgery, fake passports, mob connections, private yachts, a possible murder at sea, or maybe the perfect escape. This is the story of OneCoin, the fake cryptocurrency that fooled the world, and the woman who may have pulled off one of the biggest financial scams in modern history. This is the crypto queen who stole billions and disappeared. If you enjoy deep true crime and financial crime documentaries like this, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story might be even more unbelievable than this one. And trust me, there are more. To understand how OneCoin happened, you first have to understand Ruja Ignatova, because this scam did not look like a scam. It looked like prestige. Ruja was not the kind of fraudster people expected. She was polished, educated, multilingual, well-dressed, confident in front of a camera, even more confident in front of a crowd. She cultivated the image of a woman who belonged in boardrooms, not interrogation rooms. She leaned into titles, degrees, status, luxury. Everything about her public persona was designed to send one message. I am smarter than you, and I already know where the future is going. And for ordinary people, that image was powerful. Because when someone sounds brilliant, when they look wealthy, when they speak with certainty, people stop asking hard questions. They start asking only one. How do I get in? But long before OneCoin exploded across the world, there were already warning signs. The kind of warning signs that, in hindsight, seem obvious. Past business controversies, questionable ventures, patterns of exaggeration, a hunger for image over transparency. And that pattern would become the blueprint for everything that followed. Because Ruja didn't just want to launch a product. She wanted to launch a myth. Not just a company, not just a coin, not just an investment, a movement, a belief system, a cult of money. And the timing was perfect. By 2014, the world had already heard of Bitcoin. Most people didn't understand it, but they had heard the stories. A few dollars turned into thousands. Thousands turned into millions. Ordinary people becoming rich because they got in early. That story created a powerful emotional wound in the public mind. The fear of missing the next Bitcoin. And Ruja knew exactly how to weaponize it. In 2014, Ruja Ignatova and Sebastian Greenwood co-founded OneCoin. Officially, it was sold as a revolutionary cryptocurrency company based out of Sofia, Bulgaria. Unofficially, it was the beginning of a global financial catastrophe. OneCoin was marketed as the Bitcoin killer. That phrase would become legendary because it was simple, aggressive, and psychologically devastating. It told people one thing. If you missed Bitcoin, this is your second chance. And that was enough to make millions listen. At rallies and events, Ruja presented OneCoin as if it were already inevitable. She didn't pitch uncertainty. She pitched destiny. She spoke about financial freedom, banking disruption, the end of traditional money, the rise of a new digital empire. To the average person, it sounded like the future. But here's how the scheme really worked. People were told they were not directly buying the coin itself. Instead, they were purchasing educational packages, training materials, schools, membership bundles, investment tiers, and those packages came with tokens, which could supposedly be used to mine OneCoins. That distinction mattered, because it gave the company legal camouflage. If regulators asked questions, OneCoin could say, "We're selling education." But to the people in the room, everyone knew what the real promise was. Not education, profit. And then came the second engine of the scam, multi-level marketing. OneCoin didn't just ask you to invest. It asked you to recruit. Bring in friends. Bring in family. Bring in church members, neighbors, co-workers, business partners. If you recruited others, you earned commissions. So suddenly, the scam wasn't being sold by strangers. It was being sold by people you trusted. And that is what made OneCoin so dangerous. Because it transformed victims into salespeople, and salespeople into believers, and believers into defenders. By the time someone began to suspect something was wrong, they had already convinced others to join, which meant doubt became emotionally expensive. Because if OneCoin was fake, then they weren't just wrong. They had helped hurt the people they loved. Most scams are ugly behind the curtain. Ruja's genius was making the curtain look better than the product. OneCoin events were not simple business meetings. They were spectacles, massive arenas, flashing lights, emotional music, explosive entrances, thousands of cheering people. At one major event in London's Wembley Arena in 2016, Ruja entered in a red ball gown, introduced like a superstar, as OneCoin leaders praised her as a visionary. U.S. prosecutors later cited that event in court filings while describing how OneCoin was sold globally. This was not accidental. It was psychological architecture. If it looks this big, it must be real. If thousands are cheering, it must be working. If the founder looks like a billionaire, she must know something you don't. And Ruja understood something many fraudsters don't. People do not buy facts first. They buy emotion first. Then they use facts to justify the emotion later. So OneCoin gave them every emotional trigger possible. Exclusivity, urgency, community, aspiration, status, hope, and most importantly, FOMO, fear of missing out. And unlike many elite investment scams, OneCoin didn't just target the ultra-rich. It reached deep into the middle class, the working class, the underbanked, the globally ambitious. It spread across Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Middle East. In many countries, it was sold not just as a business opportunity, but as a way out of poverty, out of debt, out of exclusion. And that's why this case still hits so hard. Because OneCoin didn't just exploit greed, it exploited dreams. Here is the part that turns this from hype into historical fraud. Because OneCoin was marketed as cryptocurrency. But investigators say it wasn't functioning like one. Not even close. A real cryptocurrency, at its core, depends on a transparent or at least technically verifiable system. A blockchain, a ledger, a record, a way to independently confirm what exists, what moved, and what is real. With OneCoin, prosecutors later said the company claimed it had a private blockchain. But the truth, according to U.S. authorities, was devastating. There was no true, verifiable blockchain behind it. The coins were not actually mined the way investors were told. And by around 2015, company insiders were already referring to some allocations as fake coins. In one of the most chilling pieces of evidence ever revealed in this case, prosecutors cited internal communications between Ruja Ignatova and Sebastian Greenwood. Greenwood reportedly discussed how the idea of mining was a story they could sell. And in a now infamous exchange, prosecutors say Ruja wrote, "We are not mining actually, but telling people." That single line, if true as presented in court, cuts through every glossy presentation, every stage speech, every fake promise. Because it reveals the heart of the operation. They knew what they were selling. They knew what people believed. And they knew it wasn't true. But if the coin wasn't real, how did people still believe it had value? Simple. The company controlled the illusion. OneCoin's price didn't behave like an open market asset. It was effectively set inside the ecosystem. No real public trading like legitimate crypto. No independent price discovery. It was a closed world, a digital casino where the house wrote the numbers. And for a while, the numbers kept going up, which is all many people needed to see. Because when your online dashboard says your investment doubled, you don't always ask whether the dashboard is lying. Especially if everyone around you is cheering. Especially if your uplines are celebrating. Especially if your friend already recruited 5 more people. Especially if you've already told your spouse. This is the thing that will change our lives. OneCoin did not become massive by accident. It became massive because it spread the way all dangerous modern scams spread. Through trust networks. Not through Wall Street. Not through elite banks. Not through audited exchanges. Through rooms full of ordinary people. Community leaders. Motivational speakers. Recruiters. Friends. Brothers. Sisters. Pastors. Entrepreneurs. Diaspora circles. Local business clubs. And once a scam becomes community-driven, it becomes much harder to stop because people don't feel like they're buying from a corporation. They feel like they're joining a family. This is where OneCoin crossed a line from fraud into something almost cult-like. Critics were dismissed as haters. Skeptics were told they didn't understand crypto. Regulators were framed as old systems trying to crush innovation. And if you've ever studied scams, you'll notice something familiar. Whenever the evidence gets weaker, the identity gets stronger. It stops being about facts. It becomes about belonging. And if you challenge the system, you're no longer attacking an investment. You're attacking a dream. Many promoters displayed sudden wealth. Whether real, exaggerated, temporary, or financed by commissions, it created the same result. Social proof. People saw cars, trips, photos, big events, confident speeches, and they thought, it must be working. But beneath all of that, the machine needed one thing to survive. Constant new money. Because that is the secret heartbeat of nearly every large-scale Ponzi-style operation. Not innovation. Not value creation. Not real demand. Just the next recruit. And the next. And the next. Until the world runs out of people willing to believe. By 2015, and especially by 2016, the cracks were starting to show. People began asking technical questions. Where's the blockchain? Can it be independently verified? Why is the exchange restricted? Why can't withdrawals happen freely? Why does everything feel controlled from the inside? And once those questions begin, a scam has 2 options. Become transparent. Become defensive. OneCoin chose defense. The company kept projecting strength. Kept hosting events. Kept selling the dream. Kept pushing the idea that doubters simply didn't understand the vision. But the problem with fraud is that reality eventually starts leaking through. Victims reported difficulty cashing out. Watchdogs began sounding alarms. Regulators in multiple jurisdictions raised concerns or took action. Journalists started pulling threads. And once serious reporters get interested, the fantasy becomes much harder to control. This story would later become one of the most famous financial investigations in modern media. Because the deeper people looked, the stranger it got. The company structure was murky. The product was unverifiable. The hype was global. The money trail was staggering. And yet somehow, millions were still in. Because for many victims, the evidence of fraud arrived too late. Or worse, they saw the evidence and couldn't emotionally afford to accept it. Because accepting it meant admitting the money might be gone. The dream was fake. And the person they trusted may have misled them too. That's a brutal truth. And in scams like this, brutal truths are often delayed until the collapse is total. Then came the moment that transformed this from a giant fraud case into a global mystery. In October 2017, U.S. authorities charged Ruja Ignatova in connection with a OneCoin fraud, and a federal warrant was issued. Days later, on October 25, 2017, prosecutors say she boarded a commercial flight from Sofia, Bulgaria, to Athens, Greece. After that, she vanished. No public appearance. No arrest. No press conference. No surrender. Just absence. And that absence became one of the most haunting parts of the case. Because Ruja didn't disappear after the scam was exposed to everyone. She disappeared at the exact moment it mattered most, which led investigators and observers to a chilling question. Was she warned? Did someone inside the system tip her off? Did powerful contacts help her move? Did she have escape routes prepared years in advance? Did she leave with fake documents? With cash? With handlers? With protection? We may never know for certain. But what we do know is this. She didn't vanish like someone caught off guard. She vanished like someone who had planned for the end. And in a move that feels almost surreal, she reportedly left her brother, Konstantin Ignatov, to help carry the public-facing weight of the empire, as if the queen had stepped off the chessboard and left everyone else behind to face the collapse. Even though Ruja vanished, the legal fallout did not. One by one, the people around OneCoin began facing consequences. In 2018, co-founder Sebastian Greenwood was arrested in Thailand and extradited to the United States. In 2022, he pleaded guilty. And in 2023, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. U.S. prosecutors said he helped orchestrate one of the largest fraud schemes ever perpetrated, and that he personally made over $300 million from a scam. According to U.S. prosecutors, by late 2016 alone, OneCoin had generated more than $4 billion in revenue from at least 3.5 million victims worldwide. Think about that for a second. Not thousands, million, not millions of dollars, billions. That is what makes OneCoin so historically shocking. It wasn't just a scam. It was a global industrial-scale deception. Then there were the money men. Among the most notorious was attorney Mark Scott, who prosecutors said helped launder nearly $400 million in OneCoin proceeds through fake investment funds. Reuters later reported that his conviction remained intact after appeals, and in 2025 the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear his bid to overturn it. This mattered because it showed something critical. OneCoin wasn't just hype on stage. It was also a sophisticated back-end machine, with shell structures, legal facades, money movement, and professional enablers. And that's how the biggest scams survive. Not just with charisma, but with infrastructure. So where is Ruja Ignatova? That question has haunted investigators, journalists, and victims for years. In 2022, the FBI added her to its 10 most wanted fugitives list. The Bureau said she allegedly defrauded investors of billions and was being sought for her role in the OneCoin scheme. In 2023, the FBI noted a reward of up to $250,000 for information leading to her arrest. Since then, rumors have exploded. Some say she's alive, hidden behind false identities. Some say she had plastic surgery. Some say she's being protected by organized crime figures. Some say she moved through Dubai, Russia, South Africa, or other safe havens. And some believe something even darker, that the woman who stole billions never got to enjoy them. There have been sensational reports and underworld rumors suggesting she may have been murdered, possibly linked to criminal networks. But as of now, there is no public official confirmation that she is dead, and major law enforcement agencies still treat her as a fugitive. That is what makes this story so compelling. In most fraud cases, eventually there's a trial, a sentence, a face in court, a final chapter. But here, the central figure remains unresolved. A woman once photographed in luxury, now reduced to a ghost in the financial underworld. Alive? Dead? Protected? Hidden? Transformed? No one outside her inner circle may know. And maybe that uncertainty is the final insult. Because while victims were left with ruined savings, broken trust, and public humiliation, the face of the scam simply walked off stage. When people hear billions of dollars, it can become abstract, too big to feel. But financial crime is never just numbers. Behind every dollar, there was a person, someone's rent money, someone's retirement, someone's child's school fees, someone's business capital, someone's emergency savings, someone's inheritance, someone's dream. And in scams like OneCoin, the damage doesn't stop at money. There's shame. Victims blame themselves. Promoters feel guilt. Families fracture. Friendships end. Communities divide. Because the betrayal spreads in layers. You were lied to by the company. And sometimes by the person who brought you in. Even if they were a victim too. That is the cruelty of MLM-driven fraud. It turns human trust into a weapon. And maybe that is the truest way to understand OneCoin. It was never really about crypto. Crypto was the costume. The real product was belief. Belief in status. Belief in exclusivity. Belief in quick wealth. Belief in charismatic leadership. Belief that this time you were early. And when belief is strong enough, people can ignore almost anything, even the absence of reality. OneCoin matters because it wasn't just a crime of its era. It was a warning for ours. A warning that still matters today. Because the tools change, but the script stays the same. Today it might be crypto. Tomorrow it might be AI. Next year it might be tokenized real estate, private trading bots, forex academies, meme coins, or some members-only wealth circle. The wrapper changes. The psychology doesn't. So what are the warning signs? If an investment promises guaranteed growth, vague technical explanations, pressure to recruit others, restricted withdrawals, founder worship, fake urgency, and constant attacks on skeptics, you're not looking at innovation. You may be looking at a trap. If the product cannot be independently verified, if the numbers only exist inside their own system, if the lifestyle is louder than the transparency, run, because hype is not proof. Luxury is not legitimacy. A crowd is not due diligence. And a confident person on a stage can still be lying. In 2016, she walked into arenas like a conqueror. She promised a financial revolution. She told the world that OneCoin would crush Bitcoin. People cheered. People invested. People recruited others. People believed. But behind the spectacle, there was no empire, only illusion. And when the illusion began to crack, the queen disappeared. No final speech. No apology. No surrender. Just silence. And somewhere in that silence, millions of victims were left to ask the same question. How could something this big be fake? Maybe the answer is uncomfortable. Because the biggest scams don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes, they wear designer gowns. They walk on a brightly lit stages. They call themselves visionaries. And they dare the world to doubt them. Ruja Ignatova may still be out there. Or maybe she isn't. But OneCoin remains one of the clearest reminders in modern history that sometimes the most dangerous criminal in the room is the one everyone is applauding. If you enjoy deep true crime and financial crime documentaries like this, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story might be even more unbelievable than this one. And trust me, there are more.